Iowa skies stretch wide, empty and endless. When I moved in with Adam and Luana last fall, I thought maybe the quiet would heal me. Maybe I'd get to grow old with dignity. I didn't realize I'd be expected to fade quietly instead. It started on a Tuesday. I remember because I always took my red heart pill with morning tea while listening to the weather radio. That morning, the red pill was gone. Not just from the daily compartment, but from the entire pillbox. Replaced with something smaller, white, unlabeled. I walked into the kitchen with the pill between my fingers. "Luana," I asked, "did you touch my medication?" She looked up from her phone, didn't even blink. "Oh, Maia, I just reorganized them. That red one was too strong for you. I talked to a pharmacist friend of mine. We're simplifying your routine." "We're?" There was no we. I never asked for this. I turned to Adam, my son, my boy who used to cry if I so much as scraped my knee. He didn't even look at me. "She's just trying to help, Mom," he muttered. "You've been overwhelmed lately." That word, overwhelmed. It stung more than it should have. It made me feel small, fragile, like a glass someone was already preparing to drop. I didn't argue, not then. But later that day, I caught myself staring at the same cupboard for 5 minutes, forgetting why I was there. I burned the soup. I called the cat by the wrong name. I don't even have a cat. And that night, I heard Luana whispering through the vents. "She's slipping fast," she said. "If we don't act soon, she'll screw everything up." I pressed my ear to the wall. "She needs to rest, permanently," she added. Her voice was calm, too calm. And that's when it began. My fear that something was terribly, irreversibly wrong. I've always been a creature of habit. Wake up, open the blinds halfway, turn on the radio to the classical station, then take my pills. 2 before breakfast, 1 with food, 1 before bed. That morning, I woke up feeling slower, like my thoughts were swimming through syrup. I chalked it up to bad sleep. Maybe the wind outside had stirred the dreams again. I reached into the kitchen cabinet for my medication organizer, but it wasn't there. I checked the drawer beneath the sink, the spice shelf, even the freezer. Nothing. I stood there, one hand gripping the counter, the other trembling slightly. Not from fear, not yet, just confusion, the kind that clings to the edges of your mind, like a spider building a web you didn't notice until it was already in your hair. Luana walked in behind me, barefoot, too cheerful for that hour. "Looking for something?" "My pills," I said. "They're gone." She didn't even pause, just poured her oat milk into her coffee and gave me a calm smile. "Oh, I took care of that. You don't need all those chemicals anymore. They're hard on your liver." "You took care of it?" She nodded like we were talking about laundry. "Maia," she said gently, tilting her head like I was a slow child. "I've been watching you. You've been very forgetful lately. Repeating things, leaving the oven on. You're not yourself." I opened my mouth to object, but the words wouldn't come fast enough. "I mean," she went on, stirring her coffee, "yesterday you called me your sister. I did no such thing." "You don't remember, that's what I mean." I looked over her shoulder, hoping Adam would walk in, hoping he'd put a stop to this. But all I could hear upstairs was the dull sound of a shower running. I was alone with her. I moved to the trash bin, lifted the lid. There they were, half dissolved, some crushed, others still in their foils, my medications dumped like scraps, like garbage. Something inside me shifted, clicked, like a lock turning. This wasn't forgetfulness. This was erasure. one dose at a time, and I had just woken up to it. That night, I couldn't sleep. Not because of pain or even age. No, this was different. This was the kind of restlessness that comes when your body knows something is wrong before your mind can name it. I lay still in bed, pretending to sleep as I listened to the house breathe, pipes settling, wind brushing against the window panes, and then something else, a whisper, faint at first, like the wind had learned a secret language. I shifted closer to the wall, ears tuned. "She's getting worse," Luana whispered. I knew that tone, measured, controlled, a voice used for plotting, not panicking. "Did you see her today?" she continued, her words barely audible. She looked at me like she knew, like she remembered something. A pause. Then Adam's voice, low, tired. "You said this would take time, that she'd slip gradually." "She is, Adam, but you need to let me handle it. If you get sentimental now, we'll lose everything." My heart pounded so loudly I was afraid they'd hear it through the drywall. She's my mother." "Exactly," Luana snapped. "Your mother, who left us a house, a retirement fund. If she gets back in control, it's all gone. Do you want to raise Noah in a rented apartment again?" Silence. Then Adam. "No." Something in me broke, not just from what I heard, but from how easily he agreed. I turned to face the dark ceiling. It felt like I was floating, not in water, but in a room filled with lies I'd mistaken for safety. I wasn't being cared for. I was being phased out. Luana didn't want to help me. She wanted me quiet. Adam didn't want a mother. He wanted a signature. And me, I wanted out of that house. But in the morning, I'd smile. I'd forget. On purpose. I'd pretend the spiderweb wasn't there. Not yet. Because now I knew they were watching me, and I needed to watch back. The car ride was quiet. Too quiet. Luana had told me over breakfast that we had a quick checkup scheduled. Just routine, she said. Something about my blood pressure. But I hadn't made any appointment. No one had called me. Still, I nodded and went along. That's what you do when you're under surveillance. You don't resist, you record. I glanced at Adam in the rearview mirror. He was driving, hands tight on the wheel, eyes fixed forward. He hadn't spoken to me directly in 2 days. Not since I found the pills in the trash. Luana sat beside me in the back seat like we were girlfriends on a shopping trip. Her perfume was too sweet, her smile too polished. "It'll be good to get ahead of any concerns," she chirped. I said nothing. The clinic was small, tucked between a payday loan office and a vape shop. Not the kind of place you'd expect for heart monitoring, but they rushed me in like I was already expected. The nurse, young, nervous, called me Mrs. Clark, with a pitying tone. Like I was already halfway gone. The doctor didn't even look me in the eye. "Your family mentioned some recent confusion," he said, scrolling on his tablet. "Repeating stories, forgetting locations, minor paranoia." I sat up straighter. "I've had none of that." "Well," he said, clearly not listening, "I'm going to perform a quick cognitive screening. Nothing invasive, just a formality." The question started simple. "What year is it? What's your full name? How many fingers am I holding up?" I answered each one clearly, precisely. But I saw Luana's face tighten every time I got one right. Then came the final question. "Who's the current president?" I looked the doctor straight in the eye. "I voted last year. I remember. Don't try to erase me." That's when he glanced at Luana. She nodded, and just like that, he scribbled something on a form and mumbled, "We'll be in touch." On the drive home, no one said a word, but I knew that visit wasn't about care. It was the first step in a quiet execution. I've always believed in being prepared. When my husband passed, I updated my will within a week, not because I was afraid of dying, but because I respected the living. Everything was clear. My house, my savings, the bonds I'd held on to since the 80s, all detailed, all intended for Adam and, someday, his son. But with conditions, my wishes, my words. So when I asked Luana for my copy of the will, just casually, one afternoon while she scrolled through her phone, her reaction told me everything I needed to know. "Oh, Maia," she said, barely looking up. "We took care of that months ago. You don't need to worry about paperwork. Adam and I spoke to a lawyer. It's all updated now." "Updated how?" She smiled, that tight little curl at the corner of her mouth. The same smile she gave me the night she said I was foggy. "We simplified it, streamlined. It's safer that way." "Who signed it?" "You did." My stomach dropped. You were just a little out of it that day. But we had the witnesses. Everything was filed properly. I wanted to scream, to call a lawyer. But how? I didn't even have access to a phone without Luana knowing. Adam had upgraded mine last month to a simpler model. "Fewer buttons," he'd said. "Easier for you." The new one had no internet, no email, no contacts, just 3 program numbers: Adam, Luana, and 911. And 911 doesn't help you when the danger's wearing a smile. I sat in the sunroom that night and stared at the photos on the mantel. Me and Adam at the beach. Me holding his baby boy. Pictures of a family I no longer recognized. They didn't want my memory. They wanted my absence. And now, even my words, my will, no longer belonged to me. There was a time when Adam would sit with me on the porch for hours. He'd ask about my childhood, his father, what Iowa was like before the silos and subdivisions. He used to listen, but now he barely looked me in the eye. That evening, I found him alone in the garage, fiddling with the shelf that didn't need fixing. The air smelled like gasoline and old paint, sharper than usual. I stood in the doorway and cleared my throat. He didn't turn around. "Adam," I said carefully, "why didn't you tell me the will was changed?" He paused, just long enough for me to hear his guilt, and then said, "You were there, Mom. You signed it." I didn't know I was signing that. He tightened a bolt too hard, the wrench slipping. Metal scraped metal. "I trust Luana," he said flatly. That hurt more than anything. "I'm your mother," I said. "I raised you. I cleaned your scrapes. I stayed up during every fever." He turned to me finally. His eyes were darker now, tired, but not with sorrow. No, with something else, something like shame he refused to name. "You also forgot to turn off the stove last week," he said. I opened my mouth, but he raised a hand. "I don't want to argue. Just rest, okay? That's what you need." And with that, he walked past me. The garage door creaked shut behind him like a tomb ceiling. That night, I sat in my room, lights off, door locked, even though I knew it wouldn't keep anything out. I stared at the ceiling and thought about silence, not the kind that heals, the kind that buries. Adam hadn't shouted, he hadn't scolded, but his silence was a verdict. And in it, I heard everything. He had already let me go, not because I was lost, but because it was easier to pretend I was. I've lived long enough to know when a house starts hiding things from you. It was a Wednesday morning. Luana had taken Noah to a swim lesson. Adam was working upstairs. I was alone, or as alone as they allowed me to be. That's when I saw it. Her desk drawer, bottom left. Usually closed, but today it wasn't all the way shut. Just enough for a corner of a manila folder to peek through. I wasn't snooping. I was remembering. That drawer used to hold crayons and bills. Now it was locked, always locked, until now. I knelt beside it. My knees groaned in protest, but I pulled the drawer open carefully, slowly, like it might bite. Inside, a thick stack of papers, rubber-banded together. The top page was a medical directive, my name printed at the top, underlined in bold, Maia Clark, Cognitive Decline Monitoring Plan. My heart stuttered. Behind that were printed emails between Luana and a facility in Des Moines. Long-term care recommendation based on family reports of dementia, agitation, pill refusal. Pill refusal? She threw them away. Then I found a smaller envelope. My name, again, but in Luana's handwriting. Inside was a checklist. Meds reduced, second evaluation scheduled. Witnesses confirmed locked access to car and phone. Final papers signed Q3. My hands began to shake. This wasn't a plan for care. This was a blueprint for disappearance. I was no longer a person in this house. I was a process, something to be managed, cleared, and filed away. Then I heard footsteps. I shoved the envelope back, closed the drawer, slid to my feet. Luana's voice floated from the hallway. Maia, everything okay? I turned, heart hammering. Yes, I said, just looking for a pen. She appeared in the doorway, smiling, but her eyes scanned the room, sharp and quick. I stepped aside. She crossed the room and subtly kicked the drawer shut with her foot. That evening, I locked my bedroom door again and wrote everything I'd seen on the inside of my closet wall, just in case they took my journals next. I used to love Earl Grey. Every morning I'd brew a fresh pot, pour it into my favorite chipped mug, the one Adam made in 4th grade, and sip it while reading the paper. It was ritual. It was mine. But now the tea tasted wrong. It started subtly. A metallic tang, just at the back of the tongue. I thought maybe the kettle was rusting. Maybe the water filter needed changing. But when I asked Luana, she smiled too quickly. I added something new, she said, sliding the cup across the table. Ashwagandha. It helps with stress. I didn't remember asking for help with stress. She watched me take the first sip, her head tilted, eyes too still. That day, I fell asleep twice, once in the chair by the window, only to wake up 2 hours later with the sun shifted across the floor, like time had cheated me. Then again in the bath, where I nearly slid under before I caught myself. I didn't feel tired. I felt drugged. That night, I waited until everyone was asleep. I crept downstairs, my feet soft on the wooden planks, like they used to be when I checked on Adam as a boy. In the kitchen, I opened the cabinet and found the box of herbal tea Luana had used. It wasn't ashwagandha. It was valerian root, potent, sedative. Not something you sneak into someone's cup unless you want them to disappear for hours. I poured a new cup of plain hot water and dumped it into the sink. I cleaned the mug myself and hid it under the bed. From now on, I'd drink only what I prepared with my own hands. Let them call me paranoid. Let them whisper behind doors. Because now I wasn't just being erased on paper. They wanted me soft, quiet, asleep. But I was awake. I was watching. And the next cup they handed me, I'd pretend to drink. It was storming that night. Not one of those gentle Iowa rains that make the cornfields sing. No, this was thunder that shook the windows, and lightning that split the sky like a curse. The storm gave me an excuse. While Luana and Adam tucked Noah in and turned up the TV, I slipped into my room and picked up the old flip phone they'd given me. Simpler, they said. Safer. But it still had a keypad. I pressed 911. The phone rang once, twice, then stopped. Nothing. No tone, no static, just a quiet click. I checked the screen. Call ended. I tried again. Same result. Panic rose in my chest like floodwater. I scrolled to the contacts menu. 3 names. Adam, Luana, emergency. That was it. No settings, no call history, no way to dial out beyond the bubble they'd built around me. I stared at the screen until my reflection blurred in the plastic casing. My own face looked foreign, not because of age, but because I had no voice. No line to the outside, no proof that I even existed. I opened the drawer of my nightstand and pulled out the paper I'd been writing on, my log. I had started listing everything, the pills, the tea, the whispers, the drawer. I underlined the last line twice. Phone blocked. I am cut off. Just as I set the pen down, the door creaked. I froze. Luana stood in the hallway, her silhouette backlit by a bolt of lightning. She didn't enter, just stood there. "You should be asleep, Maia," she said. "I couldn't." She didn't respond, just lingered, as if confirming something. Then she pulled the door gently shut. I waited until I heard her footsteps fade before I placed the phone beneath the mattress and turned off the light. That night, sleep didn't come. But a realization did. I was no longer a person in this house. I was a liability. And liabilities don't get rescued. They get removed. There's something terrifying about kindness when it's used as a mask. Luana had always been nice. Not warm, not affectionate. Nice. The kind of politeness that feels like a performance. The kind that hides teeth behind lipstick. The next morning, she made pancakes. From scratch. Blueberries, even. She hummed while she cooked. When she set the plate in front of me, her smile was porcelain. Perfect, still, unnatural. "I thought we could use a reset," she said cheerfully. "Some sweetness to balance out the storm." The pancakes were fluffier than usual. Too soft, too buttery. I didn't trust them. "Thank you," I said. I cut them neatly, pushed them around the plate, never lifting the fork to my lips. She watched. Every motion of her eyes felt like a test. "You haven't been yourself lately," she added, pouring syrup with deliberate grace. "Adam and I are worried." I smiled back. "I've just been tired." "Tired can be dangerous," she said softly. "Especially when you forget to take care of yourself." I nodded, still smiling. Inside, I was burning, because the night before, I had found her journal, not mine. Heron, it wasn't hidden well, beneath the couch cushion where Noah had dropped a toy. Just a small tan notebook. The pages were filled with tidy bullet points, dates, notes. Increase valerian dosage. Replace phone with limited model, done. Call Dr. Gaines early stage dementia label. Start paperwork for involuntary care, October. The last page had one word, circled, soon. Now here she was, smiling, pouring syrup, speaking in lullabies while writing my obituary in real time. I looked her dead in the eye. "You're very organized, Luana." She paused, just for a second. Then the smile widened. "You have to be. Life's messy." I excused myself and flushed the pancake pieces down the toilet. That afternoon, I moved my journal to a new hiding place, inside the lining of an old coat, sewn shut with trembling fingers. If they wanted to erase me, they'd have to dig deeper than they thought, because her smile didn't fool me anymore. It wasn't kindness, it was a countdown. I've had sleepless nights before, after my husband died, when Adam had that car accident at 16, when I first moved into this house and the walls felt like strangers. But this night was different. This night, I didn't try to sleep. I sat upright in my chair by the window, blanket pulled around me, the wind tapping at the glass like it was warning me. The clock ticked louder than usual. Every sound in the house stretched long and slow, like time was watching too. Around midnight, I heard the stairs creak, not the cautious kind of step, like someone grabbing a snack or checking a window. These were practice steps, intentional, slow. I turned off the lamp. Through the crack in the door, I saw Luana in her bathrobe, hair tied back, moving like a woman who had rehearsed this before. She passed my door, went into the kitchen, opened the fridge. She didn't get food. She pulled out a small bottle, not medicine, not milk, something brown, glass, with a handwritten label. I couldn't read it, but I saw her take a small dropper, measure something carefully, and place it into the travel mug she always gave me on mornings I seemed tired. She stirred it, sealed the lid, washed the dropper, placed everything back. Then, on her way out, she paused. She stared at my door, just stood there. I didn't breathe. Her hand rose slowly, like she might knock or enter, but instead, she whispered to the dark hallway. Almost done. Then she turned and disappeared down the stairs to the basement. I waited, 5 minutes, 10. Then I got up and tiptoed to the kitchen. I opened the travel mug. The scent was faint, bitter, medicinal, like licorice and iron. I poured it into the sink and watched the dark liquid swirl away. That night, I sat in the chair until morning. Blanket around my shoulders, my cane across my lap like a weapon. The house slept, but I didn't. Because I had seen her plan, I had heard her whisper. And now, I was wide awake. Let them come. I would be ready. The next morning, I waited until the house emptied. Luana had taken Noah to school. Adam left earlier than usual, muttering something about a staff meeting. For the first time in weeks, I was alone. Truly alone. I walked slowly to the kitchen, partly to pace myself, partly to think. Every creak of the floorboard had become familiar now. They didn't scare me. They warned me. I stood over the trash bin. I didn't hesitate. I opened the lid and pulled the bag up with both hands, ignoring the pain in my wrists. I dragged it to the floor, knelt down, and started digging. Apple cores, coffee grounds, a shredded drawing of Noah's, and then, beneath a soggy paper towel, I saw it, my red heart pill, the very same one I'd told Luana I couldn't find over a week ago. It sat there like a bullet someone had forgotten to fire. And next to it, more. 5 or 6, some broken in half, others with faint fingerprints pressed into the coating. She hadn't just hidden them, she'd thrown them away. I felt cold, but not the kind of cold that comes from outside. It was the kind that settles in your bones when trust dies. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I simply stood, wiped my hands, and placed the pills gently into a sandwich bag. Then I walked to my room, pulled out the coat with the sewn-in lining, and tucked the bag deep inside, next to my journal pages. Proof, tangible, visible proof, because no one was going to believe a confused old woman. But they might believe a bag of discarded medication with a date-stamped photo and a name branded across the prescription label. I turned my phone off, not that it connected to anyone anyway, and used the digital camera hidden inside Adam's old toy chest. It still worked. I took 3 pictures, from 3 angles. This wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about recording, because when they came for me again, and I knew they would, I wouldn't just be a memory they could twist, I'd be a story they couldn't erase. I used to sleep with the door open. I liked hearing the house settle at night, the hum of the refrigerator, the distant whir of the furnace, the comforting footsteps of a life unfolding upstairs. But not anymore. Now I locked my door. 2 clicks, every night, without fail. Still, it didn't keep the voices out. That evening, just after midnight, I heard them, muffled at first, a hush-hush rhythm beneath the floorboards, then clearer, closer, right outside my door, Luana's voice. "She's not taking it anymore," she whispered. "I don't think she even drinks the tea." Adam grunted. "Are you sure?" "I've checked the mugs. She rinses them. She's pretending." A pause. I could almost hear her breathing, measured, steady. "We can't delay much longer," she said. "If she talks to anyone, shows them anything, it's over." Adam's voice was softer. She's still Mom. What if we're wrong?" "We're not," Luana said sharply. "You saw what she did last week, wandering around, digging through the trash like a raccoon. She's unraveling, Adam, and if we don't act, there won't be anything left to protect." I pressed my back against the door, my hands gripping the edges of the frame like it could anchor me. "Dr. Gaines says the paperwork's ready," she continued. "All it takes is one more evaluation. And if she fails it, she's out, legally, cleanly. She won't go willingly. Then we make it seem like her idea. Confusion, dizziness, fear. We just guide it." My throat tightened, my stomach turned, but I stayed still. Because I'd learned something, silence is a weapon. They waited outside my door a moment longer. Then, slowly, the footsteps faded. 2 sets, down the hall, back to their comfortable bed. I didn't move, not for another hour. When I finally did, I crawled beneath the bed, opened the coat lining, and added another note to my journal. "They're planning removal. Using legal route. She called it clean." I underlined it 3 times. That night I didn't sleep, but I listened, because behind that door, they weren't just whispering about my mind. They were writing my ending, and I wasn't going to let them hold the pen. Some truths don't scream. They wait. They sit quietly beneath layers of fabric and politeness, tucked into pockets and zipped compartments. But when you finally uncover them, they sting louder than any word ever could. It was a Sunday afternoon. Luana had gone out to the farmer's market, something she insisted on doing every week, for fresh produce, though she always returned with lavender soaps and new herbal oils. Adam was in the garage. The house was still. Her purse was on the kitchen counter. I stood over it for 5 minutes before I touched it, not because I was afraid of being caught, because I was afraid of what I might find. I opened it gently, like it was an animal that could bite. Inside, a wallet, gum, her planner, a soft velvet pouch of essential oils, and a manila envelope. The tab read, "Clark, Maia, contingency forms." My hands shook as I pulled it out. The top sheet was from a law office I'd never heard of. A request for temporary guardianship, citing concerns over mental incapacity, unpredictable behavior, and resistance to care. Beneath it was a psychiatric recommendation, signed, faxed, dated 2 days ago. I was being built into a case, a problem, a danger to myself, and worst of all, they'd already submitted the first petition. At the bottom of the stack was a final page, a form titled, "Consent to Transfer to Residential Assisted Living Facility." My signature was printed at the bottom. I never signed it. It wasn't even my handwriting. They were forging my disappearance one form at a time. I stuffed the documents back as I heard the front door open. Maia, Luana called out, bags rustling. I closed the purse, straightened the tablecloth, and turned just as she entered. "There you are," she said. "I brought you honey from that stall you like." I smiled, calm, steady. "That's kind of you." She kissed my cheek. "You're always on my mind." And I believed her, just not in the way she wanted me to. The first time I pretended to forget, it felt like betrayal. Not to them, to myself. I had spent weeks trying to prove I wasn't slipping, that I remembered everything, every pill, every whisper, every piece of paper they'd tried to hide. I clung to memory like a lifeline, but memory had become a weapon they used against me. So I decided to give them what they wanted. Just enough. That morning, I stood in the hallway, holding a spoon, looking confused. Luana found me first. "Maia," she asked gently, "are you okay?" I blinked twice. "I was going to the laundry room, I think." She smiled, soft, triumphant. "That's the kitchen, sweetheart." "Oh." She guided me by the elbow like I was glass. "It's okay. It happens." Adam watched from the living room, said nothing, but I saw it in his face. Relief. Not concern. Relief. That evening, I forgot to close the refrigerator. Then I called Noah by Adam's name. At dinner, I looked at the fork and asked, "Do we always eat with these now?" Luana squeezed my hand. "You've had a long week." I smiled back. She didn't know that just before dinner, I had hidden the real estate deed to my old house in the hem of my nightgown. She didn't know that I had copied every legal document from her purse and hidden them inside hollowed-out books in the attic. She didn't know I had recorded the last phone call she made to the doctor, where she said, "It's time to finish this. She's ready to be transitioned." I was pretending to fade, but really I was sharpening. I needed more time. And playing their game bought me hours, maybe days, long enough to build my truth brick by brick, word by word. They thought I was dissolving, but I was archiving. I was becoming a library behind closed lips. And when the time came, I'd speak, and the whole house would hear it. It was smaller than a lipstick, a cheap voice recorder from the junk drawer. I'd bought it years ago to record grocery lists, back when I thought I might write a cookbook one day. Now it sat like a secret in the pocket of my cardigan, always on, always listening. I didn't tell anyone, of course. Secrets are only useful when they stay quiet. That afternoon, I followed Luana into the kitchen. She was on the phone, Bluetooth headset tucked behind her ear like a badge of command. Her voice was syrupy, pleased. Yes, I've started letting her wander, just enough confusion to justify another consult. She called me by her sister's name again, and she left the front door open yesterday, twice. I hadn't, not once. She won't resist, Luana continued. We're staging it right. Soft isolation, familiar language. Adam's handling the financial prep. It'll look clean. Clean. Again, that word. She turned and saw me, smiled. "Hold on," she said into the headset, then covered the mic. "You okay, Maia?" I nodded. "I was just wondering if we're out of tea." "Let me make you some," she said quickly. "You go sit." I sat, and let the recorder do its work. Later that day, I followed Adam out to the garage, recorder still running. He stood at the workbench sorting papers, bank statements, power of attorney forms. I coughed. He jumped slightly. "Hey, You scared me. What's all that? I asked, feigning a light tone. Just paperwork, he said. Luana's organizing everything. You know her. I nodded. She's very thorough. He didn't reply. I left after 10 minutes. When I returned to my room, I pressed play. Luana's words, Adam's silence, the names of doctors, mentions of facilities, the phrase early stage incapacitation claim. I backed up the file twice, once to an old USB drive I hid behind the radiator, and once to the cloud, using the neighbor's Wi-Fi through an ancient tablet they'd forgotten I still had. It was no longer about staying alive. It was about staying undeniable. They wanted to erase me with care and kindness. But I had a voice now, and it was recording everything. I wasn't supposed to see a nurse that week, at least not according to my knowledge. But Luana had scheduled a routine home check, the kind that makes things look legitimate. A traveling nurse from a private agency, blonde, mid-30s, clipboard in hand, voice like a phone operator. Maia Clark, she asked. I nodded, cautious. She took my vitals. Blood pressure, reflexes. Asked a few light memory questions, all while Luana hovered like a hawk dressed in pastel. Every answer I gave correctly seemed to disappoint her. Any dizziness, Maia? The nurse asked. No, I replied. She's had spells, Luana interrupted. Last night she asked if the house was floating. That never happened. The nurse paused, looked between us, wrote nothing down. After a few more minutes, she smiled, snapped her clipboard shut, and said, That's all I need. Luana walked her to the door, but 10 minutes later, there was a soft knock on my bedroom door. I opened it. It was the nurse, alone. I had to come back, she said quickly. I forgot my pen. She didn't sound like she meant it. I stayed silent. She leaned in slightly, lowered her voice. Your eyes are too clear for what she's saying. I blinked. She handed me a slip of paper, folded, tiny. If things get worse, call this number. It's not the agency. It's me. Why? I whispered. She hesitated. Because this isn't the first time I've seen this. Then she turned, walked back down the hallway, and disappeared into the summer heat. I locked the door, unfolded the note. A name, a number. Underneath, 4 words scribbled in blue ink. You're not imagining this. I stared at those words for a long time, because no matter how much I'd recorded, written, hidden, stitched, or planned, nothing steadied my hand quite like being believed. They had taken so much from me, but not my mind. Not yet. And now I knew someone else saw it too. It happened faster than I expected. One moment the house was quiet, Luana out shopping, Adam working in the garage, Noah at a play date. The next, chaos, as if all the threads they'd been stitching around me finally snapped at once. It started with a knock, not the nurse this time. A man and a woman in charcoal suits, holding clipboards and ID badges. Adult Protective Services. They spoke softly, kindly, that careful tone people use with patients and victims. We've received a wellness referral, Ms. Clark. Would you mind if we asked you a few questions? Referral. Not complaint, not accusation. Referral. I stepped aside. They asked about my medications, my sleep, my memory. I answered plainly, calmly, like I'd been rehearsing for weeks, because I had. Do you feel safe in this home? The woman asked gently. I hesitated, not because I didn't know, but because I wanted to say it right. I feel watched, I said, not cared for. Watched. They exchanged glances. The man scribbled something. I handed them the bag of pills I'd pulled from the trash, the photos, the journal, and finally, the recorder. May I? I asked. I pressed play. Luana's voice filled the room. Her instructions, her manipulation, her timeline. When it ended, no one spoke for a long moment. Then I gave them the nurse's name, the note, even the name of the law firm Luana had used. And then Luana walked through the door. She froze when she saw them. Her smile faltered. Her hand, still gripping the reusable grocery bag, curled slightly, as if realizing the game was over. "Is there a problem?" she asked, smooth as ever. "Yes," the man said. "There is." Adam entered next. His face went pale when he saw the recorder still on the table. For a moment I pitied him, and then I remembered what he had said outside my door. "She won't go willingly." Number I hadn't gone. I stayed, and I fought, and now their carefully built lie was falling apart in real time. That night, I sat in my chair by the window as the agent spoke with lawyers on the phone. And for the first time in weeks, I slept. The courthouse smelled like lemon polish and paper. It was smaller than I remembered. The benches harder, the ceiling lower. Or maybe I was taller now, in a different way. Not younger, just straighter. They offered to let me testify from a side room. Less stress, they said, but I declined. I wanted to sit in front of everyone. Luana sat across from me, spine like a ruler, jaw set. Adam was beside her, shoulders slumped, staring at the floor. He didn't look at me, not once. I brought my evidence in a plastic bin, cheap blue, cracked at the handle. It held the bag of discarded pills, the journal pages, the recorded audio, printed transcripts, the nurse's written affidavit, and the coat, the one I'd worn when I had no voice. I held it up for the judge. "I sewed the truth into the lining," I said, my voice steady, "because no one believed me. Because when women like me, old, quiet, inconvenient, start to vanish, people assume it's natural." I paused. "It's not natural. It's planned." Gasps rippled through the room. A reporter scribbled. A bailiff shifted. Luana stayed still. Then came the audio. Her words, clear as a bell. "She's ready to be transitioned. We just guide it. She won't resist." When it finished, silence. Then the judge asked if I had anything else to say. I stood. "My name is Maia Clark. I am 74 years old. I can recite the Constitution. I remember the first time Adam scraped his knee. I remember the pills you threw away, the tea you laced, the papers you forged." I looked at Luana. I remember everything, and for once she didn't smile. That evening, back at the house, my house, I sat on the porch and watched the sun fold into the fields. The cicadas sang. The wind felt clean. Luana was escorted out with her suitcases. Adam left quietly 2 days later. No apologies. Just silence. But this time, it was mine. And it didn't bury me. It freed me. The house is quiet now, but not the kind of silence that haunts. This silence breathes. It holds space. It listens. I wake when I want. I drink my tea without second-guessing the taste. I walk barefoot in the kitchen, open the fridge, and find only food, not manipulation. I take my pills, my real ones, on time, with the independence I once feared I'd lost forever. I keep the coat with the stitched lining, not because I need it anymore, because it reminds me that even in my most powerless days, I was building something, protecting something, myself. Neighbors started visiting again. People who once whispered behind fences now wave with open hands. One woman brought pie. Another offered to mow the lawn. I don't need it, but I say thank you anyway. Kindness tastes different when it's real. Adam wrote me a letter. Just a few lines. No apology, just a memory. "You used to hum when you folded laundry. I didn't notice it until it was gone. I folded the letter, placed it in the drawer. That's where it will stay. Forgiveness is a long road, but remembering is the first step. Last week, I was asked to speak at the community centre. A small group, caregivers, social workers, a few older women who sat in the back with knitted shawls and eyes full of thunder. I told them everything, not for pity, for proof. Sometimes, I said, they try to take your voice by calling it confusion. They try to erase you gently, with tea and soft music and concern that cuts like a knife. The room held still. But here's the truth. You are not fragile just because they call you so. You are not invisible because they forget your name. You are not gone just because someone says, rest. I looked at them, all of them. I remembered who I am, and I hope to God you remember too. They stood when I finished, all of them, some crying, some nodding, not because I was special, but because I was still here, alive, me,